For me, there is a real difference between feeling lost and feeling stressed or burnt out. For me, lost is more a bit of an existential crisis. Lost, maybe early on in life, you felt like you had a path, you knew what was on that path in front of you and where you were headed. And then something's changed, working out what the something is. And then that path's not being there anymore. And you haven't paved out a new path for yourself. So you're directionless.
Welcome to Midlife Answers, where every week we take one real question from people in midlife and get clear, bite-sized guidance from the experts who know this stage of life best. Today's question is one I hear all the time, and honestly, one I felt myself. Why do I feel lost in midlife, and how do I start finding myself again? If you're listening to this and thinking, yep, that is definitely me, you're absolutely not alone. Identity shifts, hormones, family changes, career jolts, midlife can shake us in more ways than we were expecting. So I brought in Suzette, whose work as a therapist helps people reconnect with who they are beneath the noise, the roles, and the pressure. And in the next 15 minutes, we're going to make this feel clearer, more normal, and far less overwhelming. Suzette, it is such a joy to have you on Midlife Answers. Thank you so much for being here. So let's get straight in with the first question. What is going on when someone says, I just don't feel like myself anymore?
Well, in your intro, Rachel, you mentioned some of the things that are typically going on for many of us in midlife. But I think when you're talking to someone who's saying that, the key is to ask the right questions to find out what they think they've lost, if they're saying they're lost, drilling down to work out what it is for them, because we could fall into the trap of making the assumption that because our hormones are in turbulence, that's what's causing the issue, for them or what have you. So it's trying to be really specific.
I get that completely, and is because otherwise, at this stage of life, there are so many things going on that you actually might not know that you're feeling lost, and it's quite easy to bury those feelings. So what is the difference between maybe feeling stressed and overwhelmed to something where actually you're just not feeling like yourself?
For me, when I'm working with people, depending on the words they're using, I'm trying to work out, are they using the same words that mean the same thing to me so that we've got the right language? Because a lot of people use the word stress, don't they? A lot of people use the word depressed when they mean low moods. So trying to be clear about that. But for me, there is a real difference between feeling lost and feeling stressed or burnt out. For me, lost is more a bit of an existential crisis. Lost, maybe early on in life, you felt like you had a path, you knew what was on that path in front of you and where you were headed. And then something's changed, working out what the something is. And then that path's not being there anymore. And you haven't paved out a new path for yourself. So you're directionless. So you've got to work out what the direction you want to head towards. What is it? And then you can work out how you carve a path that will get you there.
But is it fair to say, Suzette, as well, that we're constantly evolving, aren't we? And that is one of the joys of getting older, so that we can try new things. But like we alluded to in the introduction, we have got all this outside pressure. What's so unique about the identity shift that we're having specifically in midlife, opposed to when we're in our 20s and 30s, when we're obviously still changing as well?
I think there is a growing realization that time is of essence. It's like time is not, so much of it ahead of us as there was when we were 20s. And we think, well, I used to think I was a bit, invincible, and I wasn't thinking about, really big life and death matters. So you're getting more towards an age where you're thinking, all right, the decisions I make now, the choices I make about me and my impact on life, my world, people around me, are going to be big decisions, because time's short. How much of my career, if you're a career person, for example, how much working life have I got left? Am I doing what I actually want to do? I took a massive career change when I hit 40, because I was just not happy at all in what I was doing. So, I was thinking, well, hang on a minute. I want to crack on.
Well, isn't that actually, if we reframe that in a more positive life, you doing that career change at 40, that has been a fantastic shift in the direction that you're going in. So for people that are feeling lost, actually, can we reframe it as being it more as a growth journey, opposed to seeing it as being something that's wrong?
Completely.
But to contradict that, Suzette, there's only so much self-help that we can do. And I do appreciate that there will be people listening to this that actually maybe feel that they're in a bit too deep. So are there red flags or signs that we should be looking for when you think, I can't do this myself anymore, I need to get some professional help?
Oh, yes. Yes. So in this scenario, say you were talking to a friend and they were saying, I feel lost, and you were thinking, well, I'm worried about them. What the kind of things, the telltale signs might be somebody who is got a mood. This lost feeling is creating such a low mood that they're not getting any joy out of anything. There's things to be robbing them of joy and happiness because they're so distracted by feeling lost and not being on the right path. That could be somebody that's heading towards a depression. Yeah, if people are saying, "What's the point?" I don't. There's just, I'm on a treadmill and I'm not getting anything back. They're starting to give indicators that they're feeling really hopeless. They really do need to be. Well, it's always first and foremost talking to the GP, considering therapy, for example. As another option, if they've tried self-help, they've tried talking to friends and those usual routes. Sometimes we get into such a hole, we can't get ourselves out of it alone. We've got to look at some of the other stuff and do a bit of excavation before we're able to maybe engage in a job change or, do some studies or a new hobby or something like that. If our confidence and our self-esteem is at an all-time low, that's the work first. You can't just say, oh, well, I'll change my job. It just, there's other work to be done around it. And that's usually where the professional help would come on at that point.
Just a quick one. If you love Midlife Answers and want to support what I'm building here, you can buy me a coffee or a green tea for people that know me. It helps with the behind-the-scene costs and means I can keep bringing you these honest midlife conversations. The link's in the show notes. Thank you. You've got to get to the core, haven't you? And I suppose that takes a lot of inward looking and maybe doing some journaling or some diary management just to record how you're feeling, because we can't take out of the equation during midlife, particularly when it comes to women, hormones, they're fluctuating, we're up, we're down. So it's important to look at the big picture in terms of what is going on holistically within our lifestyle. But I think I agree absolutely with what you're saying, is that if you feel there's something much deeper, then you must pursue that and actually think, how can I get someone to help me, opposed to burying it, like we talked about a bit earlier.
Yeah, because the thing is, if you let it drag, then your mood, is progressively getting worse. Then you've got more work to do to get out of it. Yeah, so if you act soon, then that's usually that applies to any health conditions, doesn't it? Don't let things linger.
Absolutely. And can I bring in guilt at this stage as well in the topic of feeling lost? I think women carry a lot of guilt in midlife in terms of they want to put their family first, their career first, whoever it is. But when they realize, actually, I'm feeling lost because I'm not satisfied and therefore I need to change something, and just alluding to yourself at how you did a career change, what would you say to someone if they're carrying this guilt and thinking, I can't change it because it's going to rock the boat, but at the same time, it is holding me back and actually not letting me be the full person I want to be?
It could be quite a tricky conversation, and really, it depends on that person's background, because, of course, there are societal norms, and depending on your age, what sense you're making of it, about being a woman and how you're living your life. So some people have grown up with some very old traditional views of what a woman should do and be and all of those things. And some people, won't be open to the idea of a slightly more contemporary view. To some, it could be offensive to even suggest it, So you have to think carefully about that person's historical family background, cultural background, what they internalize, what do they believe they should be doing, and then gently trying to explore those things being perhaps something that they've brought through with them. But are those values serving them now? Who's looking after you? If you don't prioritize you, who's going to? Messages around, we have literally only got one life to live. We don't get another go.
It's so true. And it's being compassionate to yourself, isn't it? And actually trying to bring yourself a bit more to the forefront, which I know is much easier said than done sometimes. But what I want to do and what we're doing with these midlife answer conversations is providing positive next steps. So what I'd like to finish with now, Suzette, is some practical steps. Are there any tips that you could give to anyone listening who is just feeling disconnected? What can they do now about feeling and giving themselves the compassion that they deserve?
Okay. First thing, if they're feeling completely disconnected, people can struggle to feel anything. So the first thing I would say is try what I call the 5 senses exercise. So you engage all of your 5 senses separately and spend at least a good few minutes on each one. If you're outdoors, it's quite easy because you could, if you're looking at using your sense of sight, what can you see? Look at the clouds, look at the cloud structure. Yeah, look at the color of the leaves on the tree, for example. But spend a few minutes doing it. And then touch. So grab a leaf, feel all of its textures and things, or whatever you've got available to you. So that's touch. And then what can you smell? Really take time to smell, something in your area. It might be a nice scented candle, for example, or a cup of coffee. Then, what's the other one? Listening. So, if you're feeling disconnected, put some really powerful music on. Yeah. Or a soundscape like this. If you're not living by the beach, sadly, I'm not, but the sound of crashing waves is a really, one to stir you. If losing a feeling, you're wanting to change your feeling state. So go into all of your 5 feeling states, sensory states, sorry, and connect with them and really play around with that. That will get you back into feeling a bit more connected with your own body and your senses. Yeah. You mentioned the gratitude journal earlier. I think you did. I think that's a really, really good one. And maybe use something on a daily basis. Like if you're listening to the radio, is there something you heard on the radio that really made you feel grateful or appreciative of something going on in your life? That happens to me all the time when I'm listening. If somebody comes on and they're talking about some horrific thing that's happened or a bereavement, you're just saying, okay, well, looking at somebody else's situation and then feeling grateful for what you have is a really good way to reconnect. And then lastly, third thing, plan to do something out in nature. That helps you just to connect with the outside world. And I think gets us out of a more cognitive place where we're stuck in unhelpful, negative thought cycles. It's just the big wide world. It's out there. It's not changing.
The power of nature, that can be helpful in so many areas of our lives. Just going for a walk, connecting with people. And I also love how you bring in the senses as well. And I think it's very easy to overlook how something that maybe some of us are just so used to using, we don't think about. And if we connect with those, it can really home in and give us some perspective, but also make us appreciate what we've got and how we can use what we've got going forward.
Absolutely. I do a lot of work with 5 senses in my therapy practice. It's almost like a basic. It's like a foundation piece.
Wonderful. And can we then finish up? Have you got a sentence that you could share with those listening, that if someone is feeling lost, what would that sentence be to remind themselves that they're not alone?
So what I wanted to say on that one was sometimes when we're lost and the path is not in front of us, it can feel absolutely impossible. But with a bit of help, and everybody gets help in different ways, that with a bit of help working on that, working out where you want to get to, and then breaking it down into little steps as to how you're going to create a pathway to reach that goal is achievable. You just sometimes need to ask people to help you do it.
That is wonderful. Look around you for the support, but have a vision. That is wonderful. Thank you so much, Suzette, for your time today, and we'll be back soon with more questions to answer on Midlife Answers. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Midlife Answers. What I really loved about Suzette's advice is that reminder you're not on your own, and that something as simple as reconnecting with your senses can help you feel grounded in your body again. Feeling lost doesn't mean you're failing. It often means something inside you is ready to shift. And just a gentle note, if anything we've talked about today feels big or heavy, please do reach out to your GP or a healthcare professional for extra support. You don't have to navigate this alone. If you've got a question you'd love me to cover in a future bite-sized episode, send it over on Instagram at Midlife Answers or via the link in the show notes. Honestly, no topic is off limits. And if you found this episode helpful, the biggest support you can give is to follow the show and share it with a friend who might need a little clarity today. I'll see you next time with another midlife question finally answered.